than any money that's on a contract that we wrote last week, last year, 10 years ago. It doesn't matter, right? So the bigger the fight, the bigger the purse will always be. And I think that that's where kind of a lot of times, the issues pop up, because it's like, every fight becomes bigger and bigger. Table every single time, right? Only us as the agents and the fighters want to do that, but nobody in basketball, nobody in, oh, you did better this time, here's some more, you know what I mean? So that's, like I said, the UFC is always, there's a reasonable request. It's always been met with, how do I say it? Like, in other words, I've never had an issue getting something done that needed to really get done, if that makes sense. You follow me? And if it's fair,
Okay.
it's what happens. So whether he's in a 10-fight deal, 8-fight deal, it doesn't matter, because as you can see, the UFC has time and time again gone above and beyond to make sure that if somebody, deserves something, or there's a reason to do something, that they do it. To me, see, Ariel, the problem is everybody gets mad, including the fighters. It's a negotiation. It's not personal. It's business. And so I always tell people, you just got to be ready to do business. And if they're doing business, you got to do business. And if you feel like you're worth a certain number, don't take a fight. And if listen, if they call you and say, hey, Masvidal doesn't want to fight, you can fight. Here's your purse. Boom, 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 boom. And you take it. I get the opportunity is important, but you're diminishing the value of what you could possibly do or not do. So, I mean, everybody has to do their business the way they want to do it. That's the bottom line. And that goes for, listen, it's the same thing with you and ESPN with the next reporter or the next team or the next president of a league. It's all business, 1 minute you're worth billions of dollars, next minute you might not be. 1 minute you could be worth, little dollars and you're the best reporter in the world. Now all of a sudden, Ariel Helwani's on First Take. The hell do I know, So I can't knock the UFC and be like, oh, that they're doing all this crazy shit. It's not necessarily crazy. It's just business. And if you understand how to operate within their the way that they do business, you can be very successful here.
By the way, how's my connection now? Is it better?
It's better. I mean, I can see you and hear you.
Okay, that's cool. So at this point, what happens? Like, if he wins the fight, I'm sure you're assuming that you have to go do a new deal because he was unhappy, right? So how do things change?
I mean, he potentially could. I mean, listen, the thing is, I never like to put the cart in front of the horse, right? Let him go win this fight, and then I think here's the biggest thing. The reason why the deals change isn't necessarily just because he wins this fight. I think what happens is the legend of Jorge Masvidal grows immensely, tenfold. You're talking about a guy who was supposed to fight Usman originally. Then he gets told he's not fighting. I think 5 weeks out, 6 weeks out. He breaks camp. Okay, he's no longer in training camp. Then 6 days before a fight, where you're gonna put him on a plane and he's gotta get tested and quarantined, and can't have his normal weight cut, can't have his weight in check. He's 20-something pounds overweight, and he turns around and goes and beats Kamaru Usman in Abu Dhabi on this island that they created to make the international fighters have an opportunity to fight. I mean, think about what we're talking about. Like, he could lose every fight going forward after this. He's a Hall of Famer for just this last year. This guy has to be inducted into Hall of Fame. I don't know if anybody else has ever had a better 1 year and 1 week. You know what I mean? How do you say, like, run than he did that, or call it a 2-year run from the year before, like 1 year from before Aspirin, and then the 1 year since, which would be now. I mean, I don't know if anybody else has had a better run. And so it's like he might be elevated to that next level, that Conor McGregor Khabib level. And if that happens, then you know what, as an agent, you have to go in and say, hey, okay, we've broken all the records, we've done all the numbers, we've done what we needed to do. We've shown you time and time again that, we're that guy. It's time to do something different. And at that point, you're not going to hear any complaints. I think the UFC will do that without a problem.
What is he making here? What are we talking? 10 million? What are we talking? 5 million, 2 million, 1 million, less than?
Lot good good money. He's making a lot of money. A lot of money.
Most of his
To the
career,
point,
more.
to the point that we could put him on a plane, and it's the plane's costing me about 400 grand, and I'm not, what do you call it? I'm not losing money on it. How's that?
Wow. By the way, why is Derek Lewis suggesting that you fight Dana White in a boxing match here?
I love Derek Lewis because Derek Lewis wants me to see me knock Dana White out, and then for him to put "he's okay" on the bottom of the
That's right.
of the thing when he posted. That's what he wants me to do. You feel me? So that's all.
I feel you.
Derek, big shout out to you, my boy. That's what he wants to do. Nah, I mean, listen, you know how that goes. The thing is, what's crazy is everybody thinks that managers and like, listen, even as an agent in the NFL, I don't have bad relationships with the general managers. You can have a bad moment and you can have bad negotiations, or I don't want to say bad negotiations, but things that just don't go your way, right? Right? It doesn't make that guy across from you a bad person or a thief, or you know what I mean? How do I say it? You know, he's doing business, and so that's the way they work. And I don't care if you're in the NFL, if you're in the NBA or MLB or in the UFC. The reality of it is that if you guys think that Dana White's just going to say, hey, welcome to my office, what do you want? $25 million for the fight? Nah, let's just do it. No problem. Don't worry about it. It doesn't work that way. And so a lot of times I think people get frustrated because you see someone else that went through their own journey, whether it's in boxing or somewhere else, and they're like, oh, well, they're making X, right? But there's a lot of other things that go into that, right? And so I think that's where MMA has to catch up. And so for us, you know what I mean? I just, people don't understand. I don't have a bad relationship with Dana. I don't have, and listen, shout out to Hunter Campbell, because Hunter, he gets a lot of, heat. He's the one that does a lot of these negotiations now. It's not really Dana. And he's responsible for what this company does. And sometimes you're going to win sometimes you're not. But I think as long as, the relationship's always open and they're willing to listen and you're willing to listen, there's always deals to be made. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the UFC that people don't understand.
Well, I think a lot of people want to know, because Jorge was really vocal and talking about a lot of things that a lot of people don't talk about. Will he still talk about it? Now that he got this great fight, this great deal, will he still talk about that stuff, or was it all just to get his own deal? You get what I'm saying?
You remember when you interviewed him, what did you ask him? You said, hey, are you going to still talk about that? What did he say? He said, I'm going to talk whatever I feel from the heart. He was never doing this to be, you know what I mean, to grab attention. He wasn't making excuses. He wasn't doing any of that. He was just literally, he felt a certain way. And listen, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm very proud of him, because when we got on the phone and we were all sitting down talking and going through these negotiations and all this stuff, he flat out said to me, he said, look, guys, if this does this, don't you think I deserve that? So, okay. Well, what about if I do this? Okay. And don't you think if I do this, we should? Okay. And they sat down, they listened, they came back. He said, all right, Mark, let's run these numbers. And then 4 hours later, after I listen, the crazy thing about it is I literally did this deal on a napkin, on 2 napkins. All right. And I had Abraham keep it, so that if he wins this belt, we're going to frame the 2 napkins with the belt, because it's kind of one of the craziest things I've ever done. Instead of having, like, my computer in my office and paper and sitting in there and really, like, map this thing out, I wrote it all on napkins, and then I forgot what napkin was what deal, and then I had to start it over and scratch it out and come back, and me and Abe put it together, and Georgia was there, and then Georgia would leave, to go check on his kids, and then come back and be like, yo, what did we come up with? And it was one of the more interesting negotiations, is what I'll tell you. And what do you call it? I'm just happy it worked out for him.
I remember talking to you, and I hope you don't mind. I actually think it was on this stream. We were talking at the beginning of the pandemic when you were in your pool about business and whatnot. And, if sports don't come back, it could affect business. Here you are, in the midst of the pandemic, when most of the other sports didn't come back, and you just maybe did one of your biggest deals yet. It's pretty nuts. So I'm assuming business is okay.
Oh, man, listen to me. Football's still running. Football's still going, from what I see. You know what I mean? So if that happens to us, business, then the only, stoppage we would have had with those 2 months where, the UFC wasn't doing anything. business could be better on a lot of different levels. I mean, it's affecting stuff like sponsorship. It's affecting endorsements. It's affecting, how companies are spending money. I think, listen, it is a weird time. That's what I'll tell you. It's a weird time because you've got guys, if you're going to put on shows that want to get paid what they want to get paid, but there is a loss of income on one side. You know what I mean? There is the fact that they can easily just sit down and wait for this to be over with, like a lot of the other promotions are. They could pull the whole, let's give you $1,000 a month, like some promotions are, you know what I mean? Or like some other promotions that aren't even doing anything at all whatsoever. There's no support, no help for their roster base. And so, I think that instead of bashing on the UFC, what I try to tell people is like, you got to be grateful for the good, and whatever bad, you got to work with it and try your best to fix it. I think that when you really come together at a table and your goal, both of you, is to make a deal happen or to try to get something to happen, right? Everybody can walk away from it happy. I want the UFC to make money, but I also want my clients to make money. I want them to make as much money as they can. And if the UFC said, hey, we're going to pay you $100 million tomorrow, but we're making $200 million, you know what? If that's what makes my client happy, and that's what makes the UFC happy, God bless them. You know what I'm saying? Like, in other words, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, well, you're making $200 million, so I'm not, they're going to make their money. It's just, it's the way business goes. And it may sound weird coming from an agency, like people are saying, well, what's he saying? What I'm saying is that ultimately when you come to a table and you make a deal, everybody should walk away from it happy. That's how you know you did a good deal. Right? And I feel like in this case, that's what happened. And the UFC doesn't get enough credit for the fact that they put on shows right now during this pandemic. And honestly, Ariel, I'm just being honest with you. Guys like me, guys like you do get affected if there's nothing going on. And I think that's one of the problems I've had with all the negativity that the UFC got is, why are we bashing on them? You know what I mean? Because here was my point from the beginning. If you test everybody and they're completely clean, and everybody in the system in there is completely clean, right? Then why are we worried about it? You can bring 1,000 people, put them in the same building. If they don't have it and there's no traces of it, then no one's going to get it. But everybody bashed the UFC. And so, a lot of it is like this, it's unwarranted. And a lot of these negotiations, sometimes they get a lot of heat for it. It's unwarranted. But then I also understand that there's a lot of other things that they need to do to make it better. And that, I think, they deserve all the blame in the world for. So it goes both ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So you got the deal done. Unbelievable circumstances. Who would have thought this would all happen? And could you imagine if he wins? It's going to be an interesting time. We're going to see what? We're going to see Usman, excuse me, Masvidal versus Diaz too. I mean, it's just crazy. The whole thing is just crazy. The trickle down of me.
Who?
You know who's just calling me? Your boy DC,
Who?
who gave you a shout out on DC and Helwani yesterday. How about that? Who would have ever thought
Listen,
DC would be giving
I actually texted
you a
him.
shout out?
I actually texted him. I said, fuck you for ever thinking that I was an idiot, asshole. And he wrote me back, laugh out loud, and we just had we just started talking. But I mean, listen, that's the thing is that, this business is tough. Like, you can make a move and you look like a genius, right? And then tomorrow, a fighter can go in, to a fight without his team, and it's your fault as the manager. And that was completely the fighter's, idea. You win, you just never know which way people think of you. But, I told DC, you know what I'm saying? If I was managing, you probably would have been paid a lot more too, buddy. So just, I always throw that in there to let them know. But
Yeah,
I love talking shit to DC. DC's a fun guy to talk shit to, but he's a good dude. And, I've always had respect for DC. Listen, let me say this to you. No matter what rivalries go down with whoever fighters I represent, like even now, like with Pettis, I'm not Pettis, I'm sorry, with Usman and Georgie, right? There's a lot of bad blood there. And you guys know the history between us and Ali, that there's even more bad blood there. But ultimately, I still respect Usman for what he does. You get what I'm saying? Like, the fact that he's a fighter and he goes in there and he does what he does, for our entertainment. And I mean, listen, he could have easily said no to this fight. He could have said, I don't want to fight him on such short notice.